Those of you who have had a job, which is probably the majority of my viewers, have you ever been that person that's been late to work so many times that if you're late again, you're pretty much going to instantly be fired, and then you wake up late again? I personally have not been in this position, but a lot of people have. So what would you do in this situation? Would you not show up because you're going to get fired anyways? Would you call in with some incredibly sappy, fake sick voice excuse? Or do you boldly move to try to go to work, sneak past everyone, and go to your desk so no one even knew you weren't there? You'd have to have a lot of courage to be able to do that. And today's review is about a game of someone doing just that. This was originally a mobile game in Europe, currently not available in the App Store in North America for some odd reason, but it's now on PlayStation. Here is my official review of the PlayStation Vita version of Level 22, Gary's Misadventures. The story of Gary's Misadventures I've pretty much already told you in this review already. Gary is basically an office worker that has been late to work so many times, one more tardy is going to get him fired. And of course, he wakes up late and tries to rush to work and ends up being late. Instead of facing the boss, he decides he wants to go stealth mode and sneak past everyone in the office to get to his desk to avoid losing his job. The story is pretty limited in the game because it's kind of like an indie game that sets up a story and then goes with it after that, but it's something that is very right at home with a lot of people, especially any of the gamers who work in an office. Level 22 is a genre of indie that the Vita doesn't get very often. It is a stealth game that has you sneaking around and using objects to move past enemies and get from level to level, just like the old 2D Metal Gear games. As you progress through the game, you will go through various stages that are set up in a very Super Mario fashion. You will have stages in various worlds. You'll have World 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 2-1, 2-2, and the list goes on, with the fifth and final stage of every world being a boss fight. When you begin each level, you will be in a semi-top-down environment and tasked with finding a stairway to climb up to the next level of the building. Reaching the stairway will be a matter of using stealth to avoid enemies and enemy sights, as well as puzzle elements like using items to be able to distract enemies, knock them out, or just all around sneak by them even when they're looking right at you. A lot of these items are very cliche in the office environment. Security guards can be distracted by donuts, and you get a very big Metal Gear reference by finding a cardboard box that you can hide under. Now, this sounds pretty simple enough, but the game gets pretty hard as it progresses through. World 1 isn't going to be too mind-boggling. World 2 might be fairly doable, but you're going to start going from dodging one guard to dodging 4 or 5 guards, and a lot of the puzzles rely on very precise timing. Thankfully, this helps with the difficulty because the game has a checkpoint system. That way, if you get halfway through the level and get caught, you don't have to do the entire thing over again, you just have to restart from the previous checkpoint. The final thing about the game are the boss fights. These are a mix of stealth and action at the same time. In Metal Gear games, there is no try not to get seen in the middle of a boss fight. The boss knows you're there from the start of the boss fight, and that is what makes this game unique. The bosses do not see you, so you have to find a way to solve puzzles to be able to damage the bosses while remaining unseen. Now, as far as time is concerned, this isn't really something that you're going to play in one go. This is more of a stage-based pick-up-and-play game. What I can tell you is there is plenty of game here for the $6 to $7 price tag. Now, speaking of the price tag, one thing you may want to note, especially if you're in Europe, the mobile version of this game only costs $2. So, if you have mobile and handhelds, you have to kind of weigh, do I want to pay 3 or 4 times as much for the Vita version just to have button controls and trophies, or do I just want to get it for my phone? Now, as far as presentation is concerned, the game has a very nice and crisp 2D presentation and graphics engine. There aren't any real complaints about how colorful it looks and how well it really fits the office environment. Now, performance is give and take. Load times are pretty much at the limit of my acceptable range for reviews. If a Vita game exceeds 10 seconds in load screens, I dock points from it. This is really on the line. Most of the load times are around 7 to 8 seconds, and a few of them clock right at 10. If that is an issue for you, well, now you know. Glitching is the main issue and annoyance with this version of the game. There are a lot of areas where the game will not allow you to move where you're supposed to. You might be able to only trek 3/4 of the way down a hall, and then you'll hit an invisible barrier that shouldn't be there. There are some boss fights that can also glitch. The second boss, where the boss moves around watching monitors, you have to knock him out and then knock out a computer and then move out of the way while he goes and checks on it. In many of my attempts on this fight, I would knock out a computer and the game would lock in a cinematic, forcing me to stay there until the boss came up, would see me, and I got an immediate game over. I had to try several times over to get it to work right. Now, overall, I think Level 22 is a fun little stealth game, especially considering the fact that the Vita just doesn't have many stealth games outside of Metal Gear Solid HD Collection and some backward compatibility titles like the PS1 version of the original Metal Gear Solid. The downside you want to note is that the mobile version is only about 1/3 of the price of the Vita version, and it's got some really weird glitching in certain boss fights. Still, it's a worthy game for a Vita gamer that enjoys stealth games, and a very nice homage to the 2D Metal Gear games. Reviews to go rates Level 22, Gary's Misadventures, an 8 out of 10. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, or head to my site at www.reviewstogo.com.